you being courageous or not? One of the real skills, the courage of your convictions. We often think about strategy as just being this kind of black and white, dry, well, are you being strategic or not?
Wait a minute. Who are you?
She is Dorie Clark.
She's helped thousands of professionals rethink how they build careers, influence, and ideas.
She is best-selling author and professor at one of the world's top business schools.
She's been named 4 times as the top 50 best business thinker by Thinkers 50.
She's one of the most respected voices on long-term thinking and professional reinvention.
Now we enter the AI era where the content is accelerated because you don't even need a person to do it.
AI can write, analyze, summarize, and execute faster than ever, which actually raises a deeper question for leaders and professionals. So in a world where output is cheap, what actually becomes valuable?
If content and ideas and information is easy to come by, what is it that becomes scarce? Attention becomes scarce.
Today's conversation isn't about hustling harder, it's about thinking longer. Because leadership, reinvention, and influence don't happen loudly, they happen strategically. My guest today has helped thousands of professionals rethink how they build careers, influence, and ideas without burning out or selling out. She's a best-selling author. She's been named 4 times as one of the top 50 business thinkers in the world by Thinkers 50. She's also a professor at one of the world's top business schools and one of the most respected voices on long-term thinking and professional reinvention. This is a conversation about playing the long game, even when the world rewards shortcuts. Please welcome Dorie Clark.
Rachel, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. How are you today?
Rocking and rolling. So good to be here.
Excellent. Thanks, Dorie. So, Dorie, much of your work is about helping capable people think more strategically about their careers, not just what they do next, but who they become over time. For this conversation, I'd love to focus less on tactics and more on how leaders should be thinking right now. So how does that sound?
I love it. Let's do it.
Okay. So at the moment, what we're doing, we're actually entering a moment where capability is no longer rare. AI can write, analyze, summarize, and execute faster than ever, which actually raises a deeper question for leaders and professionals. So in a world where output is cheap, what actually becomes valuable?
Yeah, that's such an important question. And it actually goes back to a formulation from now 50 plus years ago. Herbert Simon, who was a well-known computer scientist and thinker at Carnegie Mellon University, raised a question that we all have been dealing with the implications of ever since then, which is that in his formulation, if content and ideas and information is easy to come by, what is it that becomes scarce? And his answer was attention becomes scarce. And I think especially, first we have the world starting in the 80s of 24-hour news cycles and cable news. And then we get into the 90s and we have, oh my goodness, it's the internet world. Now it's really 24/7. And now we enter the AI era where the content is accelerated because you don't even need a person to do it. The one thing that's left and that's more scarce than ever is attention. And so the question, what do we train our sights on? What are we thinking about? Where do we focus? And that's the kind of long-term strategic judgment that we need to continue honing as more and more gets thrown at us.
Okay, very interesting. So like when AI can generate content that instantly, personal branding then kind of risks being lost. How should professionals think about their personal brand as a strategic asset and not just, say, a content habit?
Yeah, this is something that is a really important question because you're right. Everybody, if they want to, can post every day on every social channel now. Click, click, click. And what becomes crucial in terms of personal brand, certainly there's a piece of it that has always been there, which is your interpersonal interactions with people. How do you treat them? How are you live and when you're dealing with people? But when it comes to how you're represented online, it's very easy for people to put out something it's much harder to curate what that thing is. And I think we all have sort of seen the difference. You can't necessarily tell, is text AI generated, because there's very sophisticated things that you probably can't tell one way or another. But what we all can tell is, does this sound AI generated? And that's the
Okay.
real problem. I mean, I'm not especially worried about smart professionals who take a couple of sentences and say, "Hey, ChatGPT, make this a little smoother, fix the grammar here." That's
Yeah.
not the problem. The problem is when you have people completely outsourcing their thinking and say, "Write up a piece about X," and then everything that goes into it, it's not your ideas, because it's just banalities
Yeah.
that have been trained on in the system. And so I think the real question is, how do we make sure that whether we're deploying AI or not, what we are putting in is the upstream thought so that it reflects us uniquely rather than just the agglomeration of conventional wisdom?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And at the moment, there's a lot of conversation right now about what AI can do, but I'm more curious about what it can't do, especially when it comes to leadership, influence, and creativity. So, what do you think remains distinctly human?
So, to the Herbert Simon question or formulation, what is scarce at this moment? One of the things that I've really been thinking about and focusing on a lot in my own work, in my own business, is this question of interpersonal connection. During during the pandemic, everybody went, Zoom, Zoom, Zoom.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we're having this chat now on Riverside, which is basically an equivalent. We're connecting remotely, and that's great. It's better than not connecting because we're in
Mm-hmm.
different countries.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also true that there is a unique, sort of evolutionarily programmed benefit to connecting in person. People
Mm-hmm.
like it. It's energizing. It's
Yeah.
not draining the way that 8 hours in front of a computer is. And I think that we want and need more of that. So in my own work, I have been trying to prioritize that. I am organizing more in-person events, both for my friends, gatherings, sort of friend
Uh-huh.
masterminds. I've also been investing in terms of creating offerings for my own business that are in person. I'm
Okay.
organizing a small conference this year just to bring people together. I'm doing more
Okay.
live workshops, which I really haven't done much at all since like 2019. Since the pandemic, I was like, oh, it's so
Yeah.
stressful doing an in-person event. But I feel like with the advent of AI, it's necessary because that's the competitive difference. That's the competitive advantage. AI can write an online course for you. AI can't deliver it in person and build a community around it.
Exactly. I 100% agree. And it's like in the speaking industry as well. It's like I always push as a speaker agent, pushing speakers to go on stage and go on live. So you can't fake that unless they're a hologram. That's another story. We'll put
That's
that to
right.
the side.
That's next
Yeah,
gen.
we
That'll be
won't. We
next year,
won't.
Rachel.
Exactly, exactly. So no, that I actually think speaking on stage as opposed to Zoom, absolutely. Now, most people say they have a career plan, right? But in reality, they're just, I think, reacting. In your experience, what actually separates strategic career planning from reactive ones?
So, what I would define as strategic career planning is career planning that has two components. The first part is a piece that many people do, but not everybody certainly. But I'd call this kind of table stakes of strategy, which is ultimately you have some kind of a hypothesis about what you're going to do. Okay, I in 5 years I want to do this, and here's
Hmm.
how it would look. It's kind of a rough sketch. So that I think that's where most people stop when it comes to their vision of, I have a plan. This is my strategy.
Okay, okay,
The second part of it that I think takes people next level when it comes to strategic career planning is the part that people don't really like to think about, which is, what is your risk mitigation strategy? What are the likely things that could go wrong with the plan that you've articulated? And what will you do if that goes wrong? Where
okay.
can you take this? How can you apply your skills elsewhere? How can you recover? What else could you be doing? Where could you deploy your skills? These are really valuable questions because
Okay,
there can be sudden disruptions. And I'll give you an example of how I
please.
accidentally did this for myself. We all understand that we can't predict every risk, but you can predict the most common ones for sure. And the good news is that when you predict common risks, there often are benefits in your planning, even if what actually happens is very rare. So with speaking, this is your business and also mine. I knew that a big risk would be if I ever got, some illness or something like that, a sustained illness. All of a sudden I couldn't go on the road, and that would be a
Yeah.
real problem for me as a speaker. And so
hmm
I want things to go great with speaking and always be able to do it. But if there was a problem, I thought, well, what else could I do, and how could I make sure I could support myself? So I started investigating way back in 2014, building online courses. And that was, sort of a separate but related income stream. And I thought, okay, this is cool. So, you start small, and at first you're doing a little bit. And then, but I was experimenting for a few years. Then the pandemic happens, all the live events go away,
Uh-huh.
and you do transition to virtual, but it took a little while for people to figure it out. Meanwhile, all the digital courses I had been working on boomed. And I
Right.
wasn't expecting that. But I was pretty well positioned because I had, 3 or 4 years of experience on everybody else. And so I was solving for one problem, which was getting sick, but it ended up being the solution for another one. And so
Uh-huh.
similarly, if you're in a professional organization, you say, I want to make, SVP, that's my goal. And all of a sudden, something happens. Maybe your company gets sold. Maybe there's somebody who gets installed above you that's a boss that you don't like, or they don't
Mhm.
like you. Maybe there's a disruption in your industry, and all of a sudden, your product line that you've been working on is now no longer really relevant. You have to think about, if those things happen, what's
Mhm.
the plan B? And when you do that, you become resilient. You become ready for almost anything.
Oh, that's very good. It's interesting you say about doing your courses before the pandemic, because a lot of speakers I'd work with, we had done so few even Zoom virtuals that people didn't even have the basic skills. I don't mean this in a bad way. A lot of people didn't. We just weren't doing virtual before then. So you were like putting in your plan, you were one step ahead. That's really good. So, Dor, you've also framed personal branding not as self promotion, but as reputation built over time. So, what should experienced professionals understand about their personal brands that early career advice clearly misses?
Yeah, when it comes to personal brand, I think that a lot of times, the early career advice is just broad brushstrokes, which is fine, if you're just starting out and you
Yeah,
don't know anyone, you don't know anything. Okay, great. Say yes to everything. Put yourself out there. This is great advice for people who are just starting and they don't even know what they like, right? Much less what they're
right,
good at.
right, exactly.
But later on, it does become important for you to start making strategic choices, because if you are attempting to do everything, early on, that actually works fine because you have very limited responsibilities. It's not like everybody's knocking at your door. But when you get to be, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years into your career, you actually have a huge volume of people who want things from you. And if all you are doing is responding to them, that could be a full-time job of just responding to emails or something like
Indeed.
that. So the strategy part in developing the personal brand in terms of what are you known for is that you have to make a conscious choice to say, all right, I am going, even if there is a reputational hit sometimes, because I can't be Mr. Nice Guy. I can't say yes to everybody, but I am choosing to do this and not that because this is the place I want to make my mark. And when you're bold enough to be willing to make that choice, and to accept the consequences that come from it, which is that not everybody's going to be happy and not everybody's going to
Right.
like you, that is how you actually have the chance to reach for that brass ring of excellence.
Okay, so it's kind of requires more focus on one thing as opposed to very many other things. Now, this is an area that I'm intrigued by, but it's networking. I often find that it feels very shallow. Maybe I don't know how to do it properly, but what does strategic networking actually look like for senior professionals who don't want to simply collect contacts, but they want to build meaningful alliances?
Well, I have many thoughts about this, but let me ask you a question first, Rachel.
Okay.
How do you network currently? Like, what does networking mean to you? Like, what
Yeah.
is it you're doing exactly?
Well, I mean, I would go to events. A lot of the events I go to would be speakers like yourself would be at the event. Now, obviously not too far afield, but then obviously everyone's looking for, you want to make meaningful connections. So I usually kind of approach people, introduce myself and say, and then hopefully some sort of a conversation goes from there. But I suppose the challenge would be asking exactly how you can help each other. And sometimes it feels quite awkward, or it feels a bit, like you're wanting something. It feels a little bit, not genuine to me, even though I would be genuinely wanting to meet people, but it just comes across as this way, kind of like shallow.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm kind of like, because it seems like everyone is out to sell. It seems these days, maybe it's the company I keep, but like people always seem to be selling a lot of things. And so it's how to kind of figure out who is that person who is genuinely looking for a real genuine connection, as opposed to just, networking, but a strategic connection that maybe you can work on and, have that relationship with that person.
Yeah. So thank you for describing that, because I think that is the experience that many people have with
Yeah.
networking. You're in this big gathering and you're racing up to people. Hi, I'm Rachel, blah, blah, blah. And you talk to them for 60 seconds before somebody else pulls them away and they get
Yeah,
interrupted. And
yeah.
it feels very unfulfilling, because what can you say to somebody in 1 to 2 minutes? Like, it's not going to be
Yeah,
profound, that's for sure.
sure.
So my biggest suggestion when it comes to making networking both count and also feel nice, feel
Yeah.
fun and meaningful and not like that, is those are often not the places to go. I
Okay.
have largely sworn off of a large quote unquote networking event.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
And
Okay.
the reason is that most encounters are kind of like that. Like, if you do go to things like that, it's not that it's all bad. Like, it's great. Okay, you say hi, you meet someone, you now have at least put a face to a name, but it's not going to actually advance the ball. What I prefer to do, and partly this is because I'm an introvert, but I am a much bigger fan of targeted small group networking. So if you were at a big conference, what I would rather do is, if I was giving you a prescription, is say,
Excuse
like,
me.
okay, in advance, maybe they publish a list of speakers, maybe they publish a list of attendees. You look for people that, let's say you start with the people that but you'd like to see. And so they know you, they already like you. You say, you know what, I'm going to organize a dinner the night before, or I'm going to organize a breakfast, or some like off campus kind of thing. So you get a couple of people who maybe, they work with your agency and, your friends, and you say, hey, will you come to this? And so great. They say yes, they are your anchor people. And so then you can reach out to, 5 or 6 other people that you don't know. And you can say, hi, so-and-so, you don't know me, but, I run this speaking agency. We work with great folks. I've always, admired you and thought it would be really cool to get to know you. I'm organizing a breakfast, and your colleagues so-and-so and so-and-so are already coming. It's going to be a small group. Would you like to join us?
Okay.
Now, odds are, if this person likes the people that you have named, wants to spend more time with them, wants a small group experience, and also they think, gosh, not a bad thing for me to connect with a speaking agent. Maybe they could get me some gigs. Maybe this could be helpful. All these
Absolutely.
things, they say, great, I will do it. And so then, instead of competing with 500 people in a room, you get, 10 people in a room. And you're the host, you're the star, because you brought them together. And so it just means that they're favorably predisposed to want to remember you, to listen to you, to build a connection. And so that's how to make it count a lot more. And it's also fun, because you're not talking to them for 2 minutes, you're talking to them for, 15 minutes, and really getting
Yes.
to know each person as an individual.
Oh, that's pure gold. I'll be trying that the next event I go to. So thank you. That's great. Now, successful people reach a point where their current identity no longer fits, but walking away will feel irresponsible. How should leaders think about reinvention in a way that's deliberate and not going to kind of, destroy their reputation, or, it's a difficult thing for people to do.
Yeah, so many professionals worry if they want or need to reinvent themselves that it is going to be a destructive act, that they're
Yeah,
somehow
yeah,
giving up all that they've
yeah.
built. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because my first book was actually called Reinventing You.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I've spoken about this for a long time. But one of the things that I've really learned in the course of researching that book and speaking about it subsequently is that the good news is that actually you really aren't giving up a brand, you are transferring it. And it's true that sometimes temporarily you might have to take a step back, but it is almost never a permanent step back. It's sort of a strategic step back and then you move forward because you carry both the connections that you have, the knowledge you have, and the
Mm,
social capital that you have into the next job. And I'll give you an example. There's a woman that I profiled in Reinventing You, and she had worked on Wall Street and she had this kind of high powered Wall Street finance career, but she decided she wanted to do something different. And so she accepted a fellowship for 2 years. And this was, a very low paid fellowship with a nonprofit organization. And what she was doing in this fellowship was she was learning about like green building and things like that
okay.
because she was
Okay.
into environmental issues. And so she had been doing like real estate finance before, so she does this green building fellowship to learn about it. And you might look at that and say, okay, well, she used to have a real job, now she's like basically an
Yeah.
intern, she's getting maybe a tenth of the money that she used to get. Like if that was where the story ended, this would be a very lame story. But the point is the story doesn't end there because for her and for so many people who are strategic about their reinvention, she took the skills that she gained in learning about green buildings and she married them to her previous experience with Wall Street
Uh-huh.
finance. And she used it after the fellowship ended to get a new job being the head of a special private partnership in New York City that was trying to get more special green building funding. And she was able to get this kind of high profile, high visibility, high powered job because she was the only person whose expertise had that Venn diagram of Wall Street plus environmental knowledge.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. I never would have. I mean, it seems quite obvious to do something like that, but it's not really, is it? It's like, so that is a really good example. So, Dory, you've written extensively, I know, about long-term thinking, but in practical terms, pardon me, I'm Irish, we don't pronounce our T's sometimes. In practical terms, what does playing the long game require that most professionals underestimate?
So I would say one of the real skills that undergird it is actually about courage and about the courage of your
Okay.
convictions. We often think about strategy as just being this kind of black and white dry, well, are you being strategic or not?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I want to inject a little bit of a moral overtone to it in some ways because to me it's, are you being courageous or not? Because it is
Okay.
very easy. Every incentive is geared toward short-termism and you get rewarded for it. You did
Mm,
a thing, the jackpot, has a little
yeah.
beep and oh good, that's the right thing to do. The problem with long-term thinking and the long-term goals that it reflects is that there is a real distance sometimes. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
months, or years, or even
Uh-huh.
decades sometimes in
Mhm.
between doing the thing and getting the result from the thing. And every incentive around you, including literally sometimes the people around you saying, why are you doing that? Look, see, there's no progress. It's not going anywhere.
Uh,
Why are you just throwing away all this effort? Why aren't you doing something useful? Why aren't you doing something that actually gets results? And meanwhile, the truth is for valuable activities, you want it to go as fast as it possibly can. But the truth
yeah.
is sometimes
Yeah.
it just will not go fast because if you're doing something important, if you're doing things that other people haven't done before, you
Mhm.
have to figure it out and you have to put in the time and the effort. And it's so easy to fold when other people question you or they question the
Yeah.
endeavor. And so
Yeah.
having that self-possession and that courage to say, you know what? I am placing a bet here. And it's not a blind bet. You obviously want to have put in place criteria so that you can
Okay.
look at it and evaluate
Yeah.
like, all right,
Yeah.
is this actually making sense? Are the predictions coming true?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's so easy to fold when other people question your judgment.
Yeah.
And being willing to stick to your convictions when it's something truly important, I think is one of the most underappreciated elements of long-term thinking.
Wow. That's a really, really good answer. Thanks for that, Dory. Now, creativity is often misunderstood as spontaneity. But what does creative leadership actually look like at senior levels where decisions have weight and consequences?
Yeah, so when I think about creativity in leadership, it's not, of course, creativity in the sense of let's do an abstract expressionist
Yes.
painting,
Excuse me. Yes. Yeah,
but
I know. Excuse me.
but I think what makes it special as a category is that there is this kind of underlying theme of like, what does it mean to be creative as a leader? How do you manifest that in the art of motivating people and guiding
Hmm.
people? And I think that it is about questioning assumptions.
Okay.
True creativity is about being willing to do something new, right? It's not creative if you're doing a paint by number set. That might be nice. It might be a good hobby, but you're not saying, oh, it's so creative because she put blue in slot number 5 and red in slot number 2. That's instructions. And
Right.
so there is a form of rigid by the book leadership that is just, oh, okay, here's my manual that I inherited from Moses and let me just do it this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The office gods told me to do it this way. And instead, it turns out situations evolve and circumstances evolve. And so you do need to be a little bit creative because you might have a rule of thumb, but this might not be the moment to apply it. You might need to do something different and to adjust and to go with the moment and use your best judgment to meet a new circumstance. And to me, that is
Right.
the essence of creative leadership, is being able to meet the moment in an appropriate way.
Wow. Okay. Meet the moment in an appropriate way. Exactly. That's amazing. So, what then, Dory, are the most just common strategic mistakes you see capable leaders making, even these ones who already have experience?
Yeah. So in terms of strategic mistakes that are common, there's
Yeah.
certainly plenty that we do, but I think that one of the biggest ones is the assumption that so many people make that strategy is this onerous, time-consuming thing. And so therefore they don't do it and it becomes an excuse for them not to do it. You hear this literally all the time. Of course we want to be strategic. We want to do strategic thinking, but we don't have time for it. And this
Okay.
is somehow saying that strategic thinking is a function of effort, like in the sense of like, oh, if I just sit at my desk and be strategic for 7 hours, then something will happen. And of course, you and I know it's sort of silly on the surface. Strategy is about a way of thinking. It's not about an amount of thinking. And so
Okay.
you can be strategic even if you don't have that much time. And it becomes a really convenient excuse for people about like, well, I don't have time for a strategy retreat. And so therefore I don't have time to do strategy. And so therefore I'm just going to make things up and do whatever I feel like.
Right. Right.
That is not a good excuse. What we need is just to carve out the mental space necessary to be strategic. But that is a thing that if we are disciplined and thoughtful about it, you can do in 15 minutes. You don't have to do it in 6 weeks or 6 hours or whatever it is.
Right. That's really interesting because it's kind of, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, wow, this is so applicable to other areas as well, not necessarily leadership. It's like other parts of your life. So it's kind of a really interesting way of looking at it. Now, Dory, if there's one idea you hope stays with people after this conversation, something that changes how they think about their work, what would it be?
I think that for me, in the course of writing my most recent book, which is The Long Game, how to
Yes, I
be
need to pick that up. Yes,
yes,
definitely. It's on my list.
I love it. I hope you like it. It is the concept that I talk about thinking in waves.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is we often just implicitly tend to have an almost mechanistic view of ourselves as humans and as performers at work. It's just I'll just muscle through. And if you can just work harder and get it done, then all the good things will happen. And we do need to work hard. We do need to do that. But what is really important is understanding that we can't, as modern day professionals in the knowledge era, we can't afford to just think that we can do the same thing over and over again, just like a machine, and get away with that. We have to understand when and how to toggle between different ways of being. And so one way of being, yes, is execution mode. So you get things done, but you need to toggle back into strategy mode periodically, because if you go too long just executing, it's at a certain point, it's like, wait a minute, have circumstances changed? Am I still executing on the right things? Or so, meanwhile, you picture yourself and you're like heads down burrowing in a field for a year. Well, guess what? A lot can happen in a year. Maybe you've somehow gone off course and you're in the next farmer's field and you shouldn't be there anyway. We need to have cycles in what we do and to recognize, okay, time for strategy, for looking around, for getting inspired, for getting new data and getting new information. And then once we make the decision, then it's time to execute on that. But we have to periodically recognize that it's a cycle.
Okay. Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Dorie. And so this is the second last question for you, and I appreciate you with all your time you've given me. If you were given advice to a speaker who has not made it to your level yet, what advice would you give? I mean, I work with very accomplished speakers, and then I try and help others who aren't there yet. And I'm always trying to figure out what advice, and I look at it from a different angle than you maybe. So what advice would you give to a speaker who is trying to get more speaking engagements, trying to get their message out there or their book or whatever it is?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have lots of thoughts, Rachel, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really your zone. I'm happy to share, but I'd love to hear your advice first. What do you tell them?
Well, I mean, it's a lot. I'll be honest with you. It's a fantastic industry. The speaking industry is amazing. However, it is very competitive. And so speakers need to have a specific, I think, an angle or a niche, that they can talk about. But they also need to do, suddenly when they have their speech or their keynote, they can't just suddenly expect, say, engagements to come to them. I think a lot of work has to be done themselves in order to get to a level where people can see them. And that means doing promotion, doing networking, which I'll be telling them about this new strategy that I've learned. But, it's like, so suddenly they may have a book, but that doesn't necessarily mean suddenly there's going to be all these new engagements. So, I mean, I always say, well, obviously keep reaching out to their own connections. Do a lot of, reaching out on LinkedIn, go to a lot of events. But I'm wondering, from a speaker side, what would you do differently?
Yeah, I think certainly that's great advice. I think related to it, I would say that I run a community of, coaches and consultants and authors and other professionals called Recognized Expert. And it's specifically for folks who are, looking to raise their profile, get their ideas heard more. And there's lots of folks in the community who are very interested in speaking. And so I get a lot of questions about it. And one of the things that I often tell them is that speaking is a lagging indicator, not a leading indicator. And what I mean by that is that even if you love speaking, you want to do speaking, it is never going to be the first thing that you have wild success in terms of your business, because it is so high risk for a client to bring you in and to put you on stage in front of 100 people or 500 people or whatever. You need to be so vetted and they need to feel so good about that decision. And so what you need to be doing is, to your point, accruing successes in other venues. You need to be writing for high-profile publications. You need to be interviewed in the media. You need to be, creating content in other ways, whether it's posting videos online or hosting a podcast or being a guest on podcasts, because those are the ways that people pre-vet you. And It's
Absolutely.
through that pre-vetting that they get comfortable enough to say, "Yeah, come speak."
Yeah.
And then when they
Yeah.
do, that's the last thing. And they say, "Okay, well, I feel really good about that this person is a good speaker, and I feel really confident that they're qualified, and so therefore I'll extend the invitation." But it's usually
Absolutely.
the last thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that kind of thing, that putting themselves out there before they actually get an engagement. It's like doing the videos, doing all those kind of things. And so, Dory, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. If anyone wants to reach out to you, what is the best way they can connect with you?
Well, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it. If folks are interested in hearing more from me, I have a weekly newsletter that Forbes says will make you think deeper. And you can get it at
Excellent.
dorieclark.com/subscribe. They can follow me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, all the places. But if they want me to speak for them, certainly they should get in touch with you.
Happy days. And yes, and I'd be happy to help in any way I can. Dory, that has been really good. And I'm looking forward to getting to reading your new book. It's kind of like all these things, learning from speakers like yourself I love it, because I always learn something new. There's always nuggets in there that I'm like, I'm going to apply that to my own working environment and life. So thank you so much. And hopefully we'll speak soon.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks,
Great to
Dory.
speak with you.
Likewise.